Controversial opinion, but Spider-Man 3 is my favorite of the Raimi trilogy. It's something I've been in denial with for years, but every time I'm in a discussion about which film out of the Raimi trilogy I enjoy most, I always find myself gravitating towards the third installment. Spider-Man 2 has the train scene, yes, but I find that film suffers from a slow burn pace. And to be honest, Spider-Man isn't really in a lot of it. Most of the time he's struggling with his powers and is just Peter Parker. I think there's a total of like 3.5 scenes that have Spider-Man in that entire movie. Spider-Man 1 is always a classic, but suffers from the problem most superhero movies have, with the first half of its narrative being dedicated to origin story setup. That's why, when given the option to choose between which of the three I'd rather watch, I always kind of liked 3 the best. While it suffers from far too many villains, it's still a fast-paced narrative and has the best action sequences out of all 3. The goofy dance number is only 10 minutes out of a 2-hour runtime, yet people seem to use that as a stamp on the whole project as to why it's discredited. One bad scene does not destroy an entire movie of good. And on that subject, let's talk about that scene. Sam Raimi himself said that it's a counterpart to the raindrop stance from Spider-Man 2. That scene was equally campy in every way, and yet everyone loved that sequence.
And then Ivan and I, one day, in the writing department, combined them into a montage. We were thinking about the second picture also at that point, thinking, oh, this will be an interesting counterpoint to the whipped lame place he'd been to in the second picture.
Was singing in the rain and all that stuff. Yeah, exactly.
It's no different in any way, so saying that that dance number ruined this movie, but the original didn't, that's hypocritical. Listen, I know the film has flaws, but to me they can be justified. In the case of Spider-Man 3, the good simply outweighs the bad, in my opinion. The single greatest example of a perk this film has going for it is Sandman. Sandman is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, of all live-action Spider-Man villains. He's got unique powers, a really heartfelt backstory that paints him in a sympathetic light, and in the end, they forgive each other and part ways. Name another hero-villain pair that just forgive each other and go their separate ways. It's beautifully tragic and shows you the true meaning of being a hero. Even when the Green Goblin was just Norman, he was still kind of a jerk. And Doc Ock was always kind of blinded by his own pride. Sandman was always just a normal guy trying to get money for his daughter and inadvertently turned into a villain. The entire runtime he insists he didn't want things to turn out this way, and in the end, Spider-Man forgives him.
I forgive you.
Of course, on the subject of villains, there are 2 more to discuss. After enduring Harry being a pseudo-villain for the entirety of Spider-Man 2, it was such a breath of fresh air to see him again, be friends with Peter. And once he gets his memory back and becomes a villain again, he enacts a genius plan of revenge. Also, this is probably the closest we'll ever get to a live-action Hobgoblin, so it has that going for it. This character is, for all intents and purposes, Hobgoblin. I don't know why they didn't just call him that. When I talk about this character with other people, I always refer to him as Hobgoblin. So that matter is settled. Obviously, the elephant in the room is Venom, but Raimi was forced to put this character in the film, and thus that's why he's in about 6 minutes of screen time. It's really just best to pretend like he's not a character in the movie, because, really, he's not. Anybody going into this film expecting Venom to be the main villain is just falling victim to mismarketing. He's just a cameo, and with that mindset, the character's not a disappointment. But if you really want narrative justification for his involvement, Venom was there the whole time. He's the suit. The creature in the third act is just Peter fighting the suit externalized. But the being was there the entire time, pulling the strings from behind the curtain. I'll keep saying this, probably for decades, but 3 is not as bad as people make it out to be, and honestly for me, it's the most entertaining of the trilogy. A single fight scene should not be the only reason a film is good. It's the same argument people try to use when they pass off Batman vs. Superman as a good movie. Thus, I don't see why Spider-Man 2's main defense should be the same as Batman vs. Superman. Spider-Man 2 is a masterpiece, but that's more from an intellectual standpoint. That film is good because it dissects what it means to be worthy of being a hero. But if we're talking strictly which Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie is my favorite, and I think the most entertaining, it's Spider-Man 3.